Freedom to criticize, make your opinions heard, even if you sound absurd. Review anything, no matter what it is.
Hello, chums, and welcome to Review Anything. I'm your host, Sour Apple. Let's hit the review generator and see what we're analysing today, shall we? The Game of Death, an exploitation martial arts film starring the late Bruce Lee. Before I deliver my verdict on this film, I should explain what exploitation filmmaking is and introduce you to its star, Bruce Lee. Exploitation movies have existed since the birth of film. The idea behind them was to exploit a gimmick, taboo, actor, or a certain topic. Many of them were poorly made in favour of getting a quick buck. However, some of them were quite outstanding. The art of exploitation film was very important to film history and the development of the film industry. Exploitation film embraced subjects that mainstream studios were too afraid to do. Exploiteers paved the way for the freedom to use sex, violence, profanity, and taboo content. They were almost rebels, striving to push into the furthest boundaries of taste in favour of expressing their rights as artists. Exploitation film also inspired the marketing and artistic approach to later mainstream efforts. In fact, it's a popular craze right now in Hollywood for them to recreate the aesthetics of exploitation films. Exploitation filmmaking is part of cinema history. Without exploitation film, people today most likely would be too shy to direct a scene with sexual nature or a scene full of graphic violence. Unfortunately, the Game of Death is far from historically important. It's more of a middle finger to fans of its star, Bruce Lee. Martial artist, actor and philosopher Bruce Lee changed cinema forever when he showcased his fighting skills and screen charisma to the world. He helped bring Chinese martial arts not only to American film and television, but to American culture too. He set up martial arts schools all over the US in hopes of teaching his passion to everyone, no matter what the colour of their skin was or where they were from. Back when American Caucasian actors were cast in Asian roles, Bruce Lee emerged as a star that broke a racial stereotype in Western entertainment. Bruce's fighting abilities were creative, fluent, agile, and have often been compared to dancing. He choreographed every tiny detail for the fight scenes that he starred in. He was a perfectionist and studied certain subjects heavily. Unlike most action stars, Bruce Lee was genuinely interesting and highly educated. Bruce showed the West that people of Asian descent could be intelligent, charismatic, and were nothing like the stereotypes portrayed in the West at the time. He had a powerful presence on screen and a relentless attitude towards rules and authority. He would rebel against any system that would be in his way, and he was full of determination. Bruce also taught martial arts to Hollywood's biggest stars like Steve McQueen and James Coburn. Bruce understood and loved film. He took advantage of sets to create inventive fighting sequences. Hollywood did make a very successful and entertaining biographical film about Bruce called Dragon, the Bruce Lee Story, starring Jason Scott Lee as Bruce Lee, no relation. But I highly recommend the 2011 documentary, I Am Bruce Lee, for a more informative and detailed reflection of Bruce Lee and the influence that he had on the world. The Game of Death was a project that Bruce Lee was directing before he died. Unfortunately, it went unfinished, and when Lee passed away, director Robert Clouse, the man behind Enter the Dragon, took all of Bruce's footage and made his own movie, exploiting Bruce's vision. Now, I have seen Bruce's original cut. Bruce shot a majority of The Game of Death before he died. It followed a character played by Lee himself, who ventured up different levels of a pagoda temple to take on different forms of martial artists, with each opponent played by Bruce's friends and students. Bruce's original cut of Game of Death was almost an art house feature in a way, a violent meditation that's executed with a gentle pace. Bruce intended to have philosophical meanings within the Game of Death, while also giving away the message that he didn't believe that martial arts contained any styles. Bruce had directed before an action comedy called The Way of the Dragon. He understood how to get the best angles of his fighting moves.
However, I'm going to be reviewing Robert Klaus's cut of The Game of Death. The title alone is a problem to me. I mean, it didn't even have the courtesy to distance itself from the name of Bruce Lee's movie. Okay, let's begin.
Okay, so the opening company credits are very neat and...
I'm sorry, Bruce Lee. I don't know what I did, but I'm sorry, don't yell at me.
Okay, so the opening titles have some slick imagery based around gambling games. However, the film actually never features games of this kind, and there are no scenes in a casino. Now, the reason that The Game of Death fit Bruce's original vision as a title was because he progressed in levels up a pagoda temple, like a game. To top it off, the billing of the actors looked cheesy enough to fit on a sitcom opening. So the film opens up with archive footage of Bruce Lee's fight with Chuck Norris from The Way of the Dragon. Everything becomes clear when we see a film crew. So obviously this film is going to be about the behind-the-set adventures of Bruce Lee. No. This film is about a fictional film star called Billy Lowe, and he's played by footage of Bruce Lee, 2 doubles, and a voice actor. Confusing already, huh? Well, the movie relies on many techniques to give the illusion that doubles are really Bruce, but all attempts fail miserably because you cannot replace a man with such a strong screen presence. The doubles look and fight nothing like Bruce Lee. The voice actor portraying Billy Lowe sounds stiff and sounds nothing like Bruce Lee. After filming on the set, Billy Lowe goes to his dressing room and is confronted by a syndicate member called Steiner. Steiner rambles on and on in a threatening manner to Billy. He doesn't seem that menacing because I have no idea what his beef is with Billy or what he's even implying. Then we get the worst effect in the film.
Just waiting for you to call. But patience, that's not one of our virtues.
That's right. Director Robert Klaus thinks we're stupid enough to believe that a poorly cropped mask of Bruce Lee really is Bruce Lee. Fuck you!
Rubbish effects aside, we cut to the syndicate boss Dr. Land, who is talking to Steiner and his goons about an upcoming fighting event they're campaigning. Steiner then explains that Billy Lowe still refuses to sign a contract with the syndicate's management firm. The syndicate also wants his girlfriend Anne, a successful singer, to sign a contract too. Billy is later confronted by Steiner again while he is driving with his girlfriend Anne. This time, Steiner is joined by some syndicate bikers. Billy fights off the bikers but is unfortunately defeated. Steiner warns Billy that he has until the morning to call the syndicate. We then cut to Billy getting advice from a newspaper editor called Jim Marshall. Jim warns about the story of another man who got in trouble with the local syndicate. Cue the first footage of Bruce Lee's version of The Game of Death. The use of this footage is insulting as it completely rewrites the context of the footage. So Jim says that 2 of his options are either let the syndicate own him or go to the police in the risk of being killed. He's really not helping if he's downplaying the sensible option, but he does advise that quitting his film star career would be wise as he has enough money to live off of. This is a good point, but Billy decides not to rely on the police and not quit his career, which is brave but not a wise choice. Hold on! Why doesn't Billy have any bodyguards? He's a wealthy celebrity. It would help at least, and I can imagine it being an option for him. Later, Billy visits his uncle, who actually gives some good advice on how to fight justly and sensibly.
Then don't let them push. They will never let you rest. You push.
You mean kill?
Integrity can be an expensive thing. What is the price of your integrity? What are you willing to pay?
There is another person as well. A girl. If I fight, she may be hurt.
Send her away. Do you need help? I know some men who can help you.
No.
However, his discussion with his uncle is interrupted when some syndicate goons attack Billy Lowe in his uncle's dressing room. The goons once again defeat Billy as he is given yet another warning.
Another message, Billy.
Billy insists that his girlfriend Anne leaves the country by ferry, but she refuses. The next day, Billy is on the set of a film. The scene he's performing is a recreation of the Bruce Lee film Fists of Fury. This is annoyingly confusing. I mean, Billy Lowe is Bruce Lee? Bruce Lee is Billy Lowe? Or is Billy Lowe a version of Bruce Lee? Did Robert Klaus even know that people most likely had watched Bruce Lee's previous films? I'm sure that they would have been just as confused as I am concerning this ludicrous concept. So, on the set, a syndicate member called Stick poses as an extra on the set during a shot where the extras have to fire blank guns, but the syndicate member fires a loaded gun in an attempt to assassinate Billy Lowe. Billy ends in hospital. His friend Jim Marshall is present during the moment he awakens in bandages. It turns out the bullet just grazed his face, so obviously the doctor has good medical advice for the situation. Nope. The doctor actually encourages Billy to create a new identity and fake his own death to protect him from the syndicate. The doctor is shockingly happy to help with forging a fake death certificate for Billy too. A practical doctor would not give this sort of advice, and obviously Billy Lowe should reject such an idea. Nope, Billy is happy to fake his own death rather than get professional help or quit his job. Billy is meant to be the hero of the film, and he's found the cowardly way out. Faking your own death isn't that heroic. What follows is something I find to be very tasteless. Billy's fake funeral is actually footage of Bruce Lee's real funeral. I mean, come on! First you exploit his unfinished movie and now exploiting his dead body! What bugs me even more is that this movie obviously had enough budget to afford a fake corpse and a staged funeral. So the use of this real funeral footage is pointless, offensive, and lazy. So, after the funeral, Anne ends up in mental care over her grief from Billy's death. And Jim has the nerves to visit her despite the fact he knows that Billy is still alive. What a dick! See what has happened, Billy? See what your careless fake death has done? It sent your girlfriend to a hospital. Are you happy? Later, Steiner, Stick, and Dr. Land confront Anne in hopes of getting her on their good side. Anne then recognizes Stick as someone present on the set of the assassination. It was pretty stupid of Stick to come along in the first place because obviously his presence would help her connect his involvement with the syndicate with his presence on the set that day. She rejects their help as they storm off. You know what bothers me? Dr. Land isn't a very believable syndicate boss. He's not very menacing, and he's like a grumpy old man from a retirement home. He's more like Carl Fredricksen than Brando's Don. Cut to a post-surgery Billy, who is designing his new identity. The doctor then explains how, well, he didn't really change Billy's face, he just restored it. Are you kidding me, Doctor? You encouraged Billy to create a new identity, and you didn't even give him a new face! So, Billy's face is restored, and he relies on himself to create a new identity. Thanks, Doctor. His new identity is a beard and glasses. Okay, that's inventive. Billy seems to have a clear plan as he follows Dr. Land's boat by sea and continues to stalk the syndicate boss carefully. Now we're getting somewhere. Obviously, Billy has thought this out, and is going to be sly, sneaky, and clever. No, wait. No, he's just being a jackass. He's stupidly jumping into Dr. Land's home and trying to strangle him. So obviously Dr. Land's goons appear and Billy pusses out by escaping the doctor's home. Well, that was a very anticlimactic and pointless scene after such a dramatic build-up. After Billy's escape, Dr. Land, Steiner and Stick talk together about whom on earth the bearded man could have been. Stick remarks how he felt like he recognized something about the bearded man. We then cut to the big fight that the Syndicate has been planning out all this time, which is pretty boring because I don't really care who wins. I have no one to root for. During the fight's break, Anne confronts the Syndicate with a gun in the huge crowd in broad daylight, but is stopped by an old man, who is actually Billy Lowe in disguise. This is ridiculous. I mean, we're watching someone pretend to be Bruce Lee pretending to be an old man. Oh, it hurts my head. What also doesn't help is that Billy is dumb enough to not even change his voice, because it gives away his identity to Anne. So, the winner of the fight is Carl Miller, who happens to work for the Syndicate. Billy drops his disguise and fights Carl. Now, I actually enjoyed this fight. It may not have the real Bruce Lee's choreography, but it has some actual drama and energy in the way it's executed. However, since when did Billy become a better fighter? In earlier scenes, he was creamed by the Syndicate thugs, but here he suddenly has the skills to take down a professional fighter. There wasn't even a training scene or anything to explain his improvement. The fight is also heavily made up of clips from older Bruce Lee movies, which is spliced with the new footage, which doesn't work to me, mainly because of the obvious video quality differences. It is actually possible to create a story by mixing old footage with new original footage. The best example has to be Dead Men Don't Wear Plaid, which cleverly gave the illusion that Steve Martin was confronting characters from 50s and 40s in film noirs. Billy defeats Carl and escapes the fighting arena. Anne later confronts Jim Marshall about her attempted murder and explains that she heard Billy's voice. She's convinced Billy is still alive. How does Jim react? He doesn't. A former mental patient comes into your office, expressing a confession of attempted murder, even showing the gun, and you don't even gasp.
Hang on. Why am I complaining? He wasn't shocked when the doctor suggested that Billy faked his death. I swear this Jim Marshall fellow is taking a heavy dose of Valium.
The crime syndicate start to suspect that the bearded man that attacked Dr. Land was someone in disguise. Steiner is convinced that it was Billy Lowe, so he intends on finding out by visiting Billy's grave. Meanwhile, Jim tells Billy that Anne has worked out that he may be still alive. Well done, Billy. You should have changed your damn voice when you were disguised as an old man, you tit. So, Steiner inspects Billy's grave to find a wax dummy, which makes him believe what the syndicate suspected. Billy Lowe remains alive. Anne visits Billy's hiding place and, well, he appears. How did she know he was there? So Billy just happened to be hanging around near the gate? It just doesn't add up. It turns out that Billy and Anne are being monitored by the syndicate, who refer to the hiding place as an orphanage. Hang on, so Billy has been hiding in an orphanage, and an orphanage was the first place that Anne checked to find Billy. Why an orphanage? It's never actually implied that Billy is an orphan, I don't think. I swear I'm missing something here. Anne is then kidnapped by the syndicate bikers, and Billy still refuses to contact the police for help. He claims that getting the police involved will get Anne killed.
You know, I find it really annoying when a character in an action film refuses to work with the police, despite the fact that, well, the police are trained for kidnapping situations. They will know an alternative to avoid getting the hostage killed.
The local police are never shown in this film, so I don't know whether they are incompetent. Therefore, I cannot support Billy's theory that working with the police will get Anne killed. Despite Billy's decision to not work with the police, this next scene is perhaps the highlight of the movie. Which isn't saying much, but it's the only good thing about it. Billy breaks into the warehouse and rescues Anne. He then takes on syndicate bikers as the director portrays the warehouse as a maze. Billy dives at bikers in a sneaky and slick approach, which is a vast improvement from his dumbass approach to confrontation. Billy then changes into one of the bikers' clothes and takes his bike, now resembling Bruce Lee's costume from the original Game of Death footage. He takes advantage of his new disguise to surprise attack the rest of the syndicate bikers and even uses his own bike to attack one. Stick then arrives at the warehouse with a rifle. Billy just confidently snatches the rifle out of the assassin's hands and a fight breaks out in the rain. What bothers me still though is, well, there's no explanation for the progression in his intelligence or skills. Nothing was implied that he decided to change his tactics, and there still hasn't been any scenes of him practicing or planning. He just suddenly became smarter and stronger. This bothers me a bit. Anyway, Stick reveals that Dr. Land's hideout is the Red Pepper Chinese restaurant.
Okay, so it's from this point on that the majority of Bruce's original footage is used, but it's been cut down to 11 minutes.
So Billy enters the Red Pepper restaurant and goes upstairs. Now, I have to credit the film for its techniques in giving the impression that the Chinese restaurant leads to Bruce's footage, but here is what bothers me. Why would the upstairs of a Chinese restaurant look like a pagoda temple? Why would it just be 3 levels of empty rooms that resemble a religious temple? It just doesn't work for me. It just seems like the studio executives thought,
well, the audience is obviously culturally ignorant, so it doesn't really matter where the stairs lead, as long as it looks Chinese, so we can just throw in the footage of the pagoda temple there, because the audience is stupid.
So Billy defeats the 3 levels of fighters, and what was edited out thankfully didn't affect the fighting sequences too much, but I thought that John Barry's music kind of kills the meditative mood of Lee's footage. It's good music, but it just doesn't fit the visuals. Steiner then comes downstairs and fights Billy. I like that Steiner intends on using his cane as a weapon, but this idea is abandoned after about 17 seconds. It's a good use of set recreation, but once again I have to say that the use of doubles and archive Bruce Lee footage both don't work. The double is too small and his face clearly does not share any similarities to Bruce. It makes me imagine that the studio executives thought,
hey, let's just throw in any random Chinese man to double as Bruce Lee, because obviously you, the audience, are racist, haha, and you'll think they all look the same, haha, you'll believe that any of them are Bruce Lee, haha, money, way!
No. Do not patronize the audience and don't assume what their intelligence or cultural awareness is like. Treat your audience with respect, Robert Klaus. Anyway, after defeating Steiner, Billy goes upstairs to see that Dr. Land has killed himself by cutting his wrists. Billy then works out that it's a wax dummy and Dr. Land is actually watching from behind a door.
How stupid is this Dr. Land fellow? Did he just stand there gawking after he placed that dummy, waiting for Billy to notice? Run, you dumb old man! Run!
Billy then chases after Dr. Land. The doctor loses his balance on the roof and falls down. Well, that was anticlimactic. I wanted to see that grumpy old man perform some boxing or taekwondo. How disappointing. The credits then start to roll as Bruce Lee is credited as playing Billy Lowe. No, Bruce Lee doesn't even know who Billy Lowe is because, well, he was dead during this production.
So, that was Robert Klaus's cut of the Game of Death. My conclusive opinion? Well, personally I believe that it's a stupid and awfully contrived mess. It's an insult to Bruce Lee's vision, an insult to Bruce Lee's fans, an insult to Bruce Lee's culture. I hope you enjoyed my review. Feel free to watch my other reviews on my channel, and you are welcome to subscribe to my channel if you'd like to be updated about every review that I make. I've also got Twitter now, yay! So you can follow me on Twitter. Goodbye, chums.